listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me will be Sean.
Hello.
And we'll be discussing the 1981 Tobe Hooper film, The Funhouse. But before that, we'll go through some things we've been watching since it is October officially. There's a lot of things out there you can check out, especially a lot of stuff on streaming services.
Yeah.
You can check out, across Hulu. I was going to say Instagram. No, not Instagram. Amazon Prime, Netflix, Shudder. There's all these different services with a ton of stuff out there.
I feel like everybody really ramped up their efforts this year as far as original content,
Yeah.
pushing out some stuff. Amazon Video really didn't that I can think of.
They just have a lot of like catalog horror films.
But like as far as originally produced, like
Yeah.
Hulu,
Yeah, because Hulu has an entire section on their service right now called Huluween. So, to be fair, some of it is just kind of these nothing movies that are kind of these low budget things that people aren't that aware of. There are some classics on there and some more well-known movies.
and then the Blumhouse one that you watched, right?
Yeah, so they have like some older classic movies like American Psycho's on there, I think, and Signs and...
I feel like they got a pretty good catalog. Right
I have to look. I don't remember exactly what was on there, but they had like a decent selection. And then they had their Huluween Film Fest, which was different short films that were created as part of their service, where I guess they paid for them. And there's like, I forget how many of them there are, but they're all out there. You can watch them. And I actually watched all of those. There was really one of them to me that was the standout, and then some of them were just kind of... And two, like, I was like, oh, is this something that they could have possibly had, like, notices for that we missed? But, like, one of the directors was Rodney Asher, who had directed Room 237 and The Nightmare and, other stuff. So, somebody that's had movies at Sundance.
Yeah.
Albeit they were documentaries, but, so it was named people, and they had money behind them, too. Let's see. So Huluween. So Hulu. They also have like Baskin, Blair Witch Project, Jigsaw, which I actually watched for some reason. Their movie, The Body, which is part of that series. So Blumhouse has a series with Hulu where every month they're going to release an entire like feature length movie. So I think this one, I think is like over an hour and a half. So it's feature length movies are releasing every month that I guess are related to the month they're released in, which is an interesting tactic, and a lot of anthologies have done something similar. There was the anthology Holidays, where it's about all the different holidays, and then even Volumes of Blood horror stories is about a bunch of different months and holidays, and there's been a lot of movies that have kind of trafficked in that. Let's see. So Hulu also has Child's Play, Children of the Corn, Collector. There's a bunch of stuff on there. So they
I feel like I watched something on there, and I can't even remember what I watched. But
yeah, they have a pretty decent selection.
Probably Poltergeist too, if that's on there. I watched that recently.
Yeah, and then like Hellraiser and stuff like that. So, and like ABCs of Death and some different indie stuff that's on there. So they have a pretty good selection. But they're the Body, so it's part of their series of each month having a new movie. I had Ray Santiago in it in like a part. So from Ash vs. Evil Dead. And
also from Meet the Fockers.
Yeah,
Ben Stiller's illegitimate child, I think maybe he was supposed to be.
Yeah, so it was one of those things where apparently it was a short film or a segment from an anthology that got blown out into an entire feature-length movie. And I don't know there was enough meat on the bones for it, really, because it's essentially about a hitman has a dead body, and then due to, Halloween hijinks, he has to interact with a group of people and try to get the body to a certain place by the end of the night. And so you think like,
That's a pretty cool premise.
It's a decent enough premise. You can kind of go a little bit, on the goofy side and have Weekend at Bernie's type stuff, or you can go more serious. It kind of straddles the line between the different directions it goes. It's never really that funny, and it's never really that scary. It's more of just something to me. It feels like it'd been a lot better, like 30 minutes shorter, just because I don't think there was enough story. I mean, because I was telling you before this started, they have parts like where a character like tracks everyone by their cell phone and deletes police body cam footage. And it's like, this is just, straining believability. I would much rather have it been more of like, not just people hiding in a warehouse and then somebody finding their phone. To me, it's kind of cheap. I would have just rather had more of, on the run type stuff. So, it wasn't terrible by any means, but it's just, I was expecting a little bit more. When I saw Ray Santiago's in it, I was kind of excited because I really liked him in Ash vs. Evil Dead. And the thing in this, they didn't give him enough to do because he wasn't the lead character. He was just one of the ensemble cast. But, we'll see what they do with the remaining months. It's one of those things, too. Like, whenever you look at IMDb, the reviews on there are so... everybody's so full of hyperbole. It's like it's a 1 or it's a 10. And then you get the realistic reviews that are in the middle, but they're drowned out by the people that say, worst thing I've ever seen, or the people who were involved with the production or have relatives who give it a 10. It's like on our stuff, we've seen, that's the thing it's been kind of funny on Amazon Prime because we have most of our shorts on there. Like for Twin Trees, there's real reviews, not people I know, just people reviewing it, and generally decent reviews. And then one person gave us the very hateful review on IMDb, which is whatever, but that seems how people operate. They see something and they're kind of meh about it, they don't review it. They see it and they love it, they review it. They see it and they hate it, then they're even more inclined to review it. So I know I saw other people who did dig the body. I didn't really get taken in by it. I was kind of hoping it would be something just kind of fun and cool. And to me, it just kind of missed the mark for what I'm looking for. But yeah,
it is a cool premise though.
And then, did you watch any of the Halloween shorts?
No, I did not.
So those are kind of a mixed bag. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are a little bit forgettable.
Bag, you would say.
Yeah. Some of them are depending on what your preferences are. What's the stuff that comes in the black wrapper and the orange wrapper?
Oh yeah, I love that stuff.
So there's like that and candy corn. Some people love or hate those things. So I think that some of those shorts are kind of like that. Like the Hug is the one that has the most views on YouTube, and I've seen most people talking about. And it's about a pizza place where there's the animatronic panda dancing doll thing, kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese. So that's kind of just a premise that lends itself to be fun. And then not that they do anything amazing with the story, but it is interesting. Some of the other ones, it's like, oh, man, I wish they had given us those resources because I watched the behind the scenes and they were shooting it like on real cameras with the wireless, HDMI transmitters, cranes that are on the dollies and all that stuff. So all these real budgeted equipment because I think Fox produced them. It's like, man, I would have loved to got in on that. But, they're probably looking at people that have far more of a track record or have actually worked on different shows or projects or movies. But, so I think that's, those are all out there. You can watch them. That one, there was one called Carve that was about a pumpkin, which I recently rewatched some of Tales from Halloween, and the pumpkin segment from that is way better. Granted, it's an entire segment. It's directed by Neil Marshall, so it's not necessarily a fair comparison, but it reminded me of like similar effects kind of, or similar premise. Let's see, I have the new iPhone and it does the face unlock, but if I'm using the microphone, it doesn't unlock through the microphone, so I have to hold it around. I'm trying to remember all the stuff that I watched. I watched a bunch of stuff.
You watched Tales from Halloween, Tales from the Hood too, right? Oh
yeah, I watched Tales from the Hood too. So if you go back and listen to our Tales from the Hood review, good enough movie. I don't remember exactly what we gave it. It's not like one of my favorites or the best out there, but it was an enjoyable enough romp that just really reminds you of the 90s. And it is funny reading the reviews for Tales from the Hood too. And there are people who said, "Oh, the first one wasn't political at all." Blah blah blah. It's like, well, actually, if you came away from the first one, not thinking that there was any politics in it whatsoever, maybe you're just kind of oblivious to the world. But the second one, so the first one felt like here's some stories that have a social undercurrent or message, but it's an enjoyable segment. There's the racist governor that lives on the plantation with the dolls. It's a fun segment. The cop segment where there's like the cop that comes back from the dead or whatever. So there's these different segments that have entertainment value on their own, that have social messaging peppered throughout. This one feels like the point was to make political messages, and it's very heavy-handed, and that they have the ghost of Martin Luther King Jr. appear at some point. So I feel like,
We're doing it, guys. We're doing it.
I feel like what happened is they, maybe it was ruminating on doing this type of sequel for a while. And then when they decided to get it in gear, it was after, Trump got elected. So that really fired up the anti-Trump, anti-Republican base to say, hey, here's our worst fears come to life. And let's make a movie that exemplifies all the things that we're afraid of, all the things that could happen or all the different elements of society when it's satire. But the problem is, say that you hate that political viewpoint. If somebody does it well and weaves it into an entertainment story, an entertaining story, you can come away like that person that reviewed the first one and said there was no politics in it. If somebody does a movie well enough, you don't really care about the underlying message as much. But this one, it was enjoyable. This one, it was just so heavy-handed from the get-go, and it looked a lot cheaper than the first one. Keith David was in it, but he was probably there for all of 1 or 2 days because he's in the wraparound segment. And they didn't really give him as much to do as in the original movie, the kind of crypt keeper character. So I went into it just like, oh man, because I remember listening to an episode of the Movie Crypt podcast with one of the directors of it was on there, and they talked about it. I was like, oh, I'll check that out. And after watching it, it's like there was maybe one segment that was kind of fun, but the movie, to be called Tales from the Hood, had almost nothing to do with the hood. Now, I know that's kind of like an old term for a low-income area, but you would think there'd be more street-level involvement that kind of satirizes like the ground level, but there's patriotic robot military contract stuff where it's kind of like a scene from Iron Man 2 where they have like a patriotic robot that's supposed to be or like American defense, and then it does like goes wacko, and there's things to do with the TV spiritualist. There's stuff to do with stealing a doll.
Was there a doll segment in the original one, right?
Yeah, and that doll one of the dolls does make a cameo.
Cool,
but it just feels like a much lesser version of what the original one was, because I know that times have changed. Like if the original one was made for a budget, let's say mid-millions, somewhere under 10 million. I have to look that up. I have no idea what the budget for the original one was, but the original one, even though it wasn't a huge budget Jurassic Park, it looked like there was some money behind it. It never drew attention to the fact that it wasn't. This new one just felt really cheap.
Things can be done cheaper now, so sometimes when they can be done cheaper, they are done cheaper. But they probably had a plan of just being distributed on streaming.
So the budget was estimated for the original at $6 million. I would be surprised that the budget for the second one was over $1 million. I know that, cameras have came way down, and, the original one was obviously shot on film. This new one is shot digital. There was no, I guess if you just absolutely agreed with all the political points 100% and didn't care about, like how people watch religious film, and the movie has very poor production value and very poor acting, but since they agree with the underlying message, they say it's the best movie ever.
Yeah.
So I guess if you were so far in love with the politics of the movie, you could come away from that. But this is not something I could really recommend to people who are huge fans of the original.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, because if it was a worthy follow-up, even if it's in the same ballpark, it just feels like, some of the original creators involved with it too, it feels like, this time around, it was all motivated by politics first, story second. And like I said, not even talking about if you agree or disagree with the politics of it. It's so heavy-handed. Like I said,
yeah, that's a bummer on any side. Like so many of the Christian films, when you catch glimpses of them on TV or something, they're so heavy-handed you can't stand it. You can't even give it a chance because it's like they've because politics first, story second.
Rusty Cundiff was the director who had also worked on the first one. So it's just like the first one I remember, first too. So when you watch the second one, the opening segment or the opening sequence, like the credit sequence has like CGI skeletons and stuff that just looks like the background of somebody's MySpace page. So from that point I was like, man, that like we on our stuff would say, man, that's kind of chintzy and cheesy. Let's not use that. Let's find something else. So it feels really cheap, and it feels like, it just feels, I'm trying to remember like other examples, like, Trick or Treat or all these different anthologies that have come out in the past 15 years. It feels nothing like that. This feels more like the ones you see on Amazon Prime that are made for little of nothing. And it's, disappointing because they had, a good idea and a good concept, and it's a perfect time to revisit that idea to show how little or how much things have changed. But it just feels like these stories just, there's time travel and
Should have had Jordan Peele just produce a TV series that was like Tales from the Crypt.
yeah, I mean, there's
that would have been like a good thing.
it was
to do,
it was such fertile ground to come out and do
Yeah.
something cool with it, but then it just came out feeling like they came up with what what their point was before they wrote the story.
Yeah.
And like, oh, let's do this one about this, and let's do this one about this, and there's one segment in the middle that's supposed to, or the one segment that has to do with like a guy that's helping a governor's campaign who lives on a plantation. I'm assuming it's supposed to be like the emotional cornerstone of the movie, but to me, it was by far the worst segment in the movie, and it's just so heavy-handed and preachy, and didn't make a ton of sense, and it just had high hopes, but I had hopes it would be fun.
Did you check out any user reviews for that?
Yes.
How were they? Any positive ones?
So the thing that makes this movie hard to suss out the user reviews, similar to The First Purge or some other recent movies, is the politics going into it. I think a lot of people are aware the politics were anti-racist and anti-white supremacist and things like that. And that just made a lot of people furious. And they said, this movie's the most racist piece of garbage ever. It's like, I mean, so I guess you must identify with the white supremacists. I don't know. When you portray people
So
who
it
are,
seems like some maybe some racist people were giving reviews for it.
yes, it
Okay.
seems like some people who just really hated the message of the movie
Yeah.
watched it, as a hate watched it,
Yeah.
so that they could then just give it a terrible review and at least know what happens in it. And there's other people who probably need to counteract that, give it a 10 out of 10. And then I think the average is like a 4.6 out of 10. And I would say that's not too far off the mark, unfortunately. It's just, when I saw Keith David's going to be, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Keith David's awesome, but he was probably just collecting a paycheck there. Or, at least maybe he liked the producers and liked the idea.
Yeah.
But even the wraparound just felt super cheap. It felt like they're shooting a lab in like a warehouse with some sheets up and stuff. It just did not live up to what the legacy of the original
bummer.
was. I'm trying to think if there's other stuff.
You watch Apostle?
Apostle, so that's new Gareth Evans movie.
I really wanted to watch that. I just did not have, because it's over 2 hours, right?
Yeah, right around
Yeah,
there.
I didn't have 2 hours to like dedicate to focus on it, because that one I want to sit down and watch.
Gareth Evans. I always confuse Gareth Evans and Gareth Edwards, because Edwards, am I right in that he's the one that directed Godzilla and Star Wars?
I thought
Or
that
Rogue
was
One.
I thought that was Evans. I don't know. I was
I always get so it's Gareth Edwards. Gareth Edwards directed Rogue One and stuff, and then Gareth Evans directed The Raid or The Raid Redemption, Raid 2, that segment from VHS.
okay. Yes.
So Apostle
Got
has it stars Dan Stevens and Michael Sheen, and it's set in 1905, and basically there's this cult or cult-ish type community that lives like on like a Welsh island, and Dan Stevens' character Dan Stevens was in The Guest and is on Legion and a bunch of other stuff.
Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast is the Beast. So this movie is very different from that. His sister was kidnapped out of this cult, and they want a ransom from his father, who is wealthy. And then he ends up going in his father's place to secure her return. And this movie so to explain what you expect going in, it's kind of like Wicker Man light mixed with Hostel. And by Hostel, I mean the amount of violence that goes on in it. And there's torture devices, and there's characters that kind of look like they're out of Silent Hill, or at least, one character that kind of looks like something from Silent Hill. And then it's mixed with the kind of religious imagery. So, it's not a bad movie. It's about 30 minutes too long. I really feel like they could have trimmed a lot out of it and not missed much. And it's just a weird juxtaposition to have kind of like the extreme gore and violence in it. and they have kind of like the medieval torture things they have. Some of it just feels like they were going over the top to be over the top because of some of the torture devices they have. That you're rolling someone up into this thing that has all these like barbs on it. Like it just seems over the top for the sake of being over the top. Gratuitous. So, parts almost.
I mean, the Raid was over the top, but that was perfect for, an action film. Like you want to you want to top all the other ones. And then Raid 2, you said about it being half hour too long. The Raid 2, I don't think was too long, but that was a very full movie compared to the first one because it was well over 2 hours from what I remember. That was a big experience, compared to that first one, which was very lean. So it seems like he may like to end up on the long end of things.
1, 2, I assume being made for Netflix, they probably didn't have as many restrictions on thing. Oh, and 2, like I forgot to mention, Tales from the Hood 2 is on Netflix, which is like a week or two after it came out on VOD. So maybe they saw a way to make their money back and took it.
Yeah.
Because usually people try to space the window out a little bit before things go on Netflix because then you don't make any money on sales. But Apostle, Michael Sheen was really good in it.
Oh, real quick, I wonder if Netflix was like, seeing the output that other people were doing for horror.
Yeah.
And they're like, we got to grab up something else. Tales from the Hood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if like that was a deal done in late stages.
I have a feeling that if Netflix had funded Tales from the Hood, it would look a lot better, at least.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like a movie that's kind of cheaped out.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. But, Apostles movie, on the other hand, like it looks really nice. It looks textured and,
the trailer was killer.
It's just because Julie and I both watched it and she wasn't a big fan. And I think I liked it more than she did, but I just felt like it was a bit too long because there's a lot of stuff that wasn't really justified in the running time. And I was just really tired that night that we watched it. And I was like, man, maybe we should watch something else because this is like, now I'm super tired.
Yeah.
But I liked Dan Stevens, I've liked Gareth Evans, and I've liked, stuff like that. So, and Michael Sheen, I've always liked him things. So I was expecting a lot, and it came out just being like, oh, okay, that was fine. It wasn't like anything that's in my top 5 of the year list so far.
That's a bummer just because I love the Raid and the Raid 2.
For some people, it could be on their top 10s or top 5s or whatever. It's just, to me, it kind of...
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, I'd still recommend like taking it, giving it a look, but just to me, it didn't meet the expectations of what I thought it could do. And then like Dan Stevens' character, the entire movie just kind of walks around like scowling and... It just like he's a very charismatic actor from things like The Guest and Legion, so they don't really tap into much of that. He's mostly just in, gruff mode. There's a few times in the movie they teased where it's going to kind of go into action like The Raid or something, but then they, it would start and then it would immediately be over, and you're like, oh, where'd that come from, and why didn't that come back again? So there was just moments where it kind of did things like that. So it went a little bit too far on the torture porn aspects, in my opinion. And I don't want to give spoilers, but once you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. There's one thing it did that it seems like almost every type of these movies does. When you have a character in a situation, the way they end up getting out of it or the type of injury they get is about the same in every freaking movie. And if you notice, if I mentioned Hostel, there's a lot of movies where characters come away with similar injuries, and it feels like a cop-out. And it's like, why do you have to do this like in all these movies, have this specifically happen? But overall, for Halloween, I don't know how Halloweeny it is. It's got horror elements, and it has supernatural elements, and it doesn't it shows you that pretty early. It's not something where it's like The Village or it makes you wait till the last 3 minutes to get a reveal. It kind of is more upfront with what's going on. But yeah, so I, enjoyed it, but it wasn't a knockout like I thought it was going to be. And then there's other stuff I watched, but you can go through anything that you want to mention.
Anything else new or important?
Trying to remember. So there's a bunch of stuff I watched that was old. Jigsaw. So that was the newest movie in the Saw series, is on Hulu. It's really no worse than some of the later movies from the original Saw franchise.
Because you've watched them all now, right?
Yeah, only because they were on Netflix at some point or Amazon or one of those services last year.
You're a Saw head.
Well, it's just stuff I would throw in the background when doing work because I'm not really super invested. And then they always have the twist at the end of who's helping the killer, and the music comes in and all that stuff. So they all follow the same formula, and they have the ridiculous puzzles and crimes and what have you. I don't think it was any worse than any of the. I don't think it was worse than the worst of that series. Didn't feel cheap or didn't feel like a complete, step down. It didn't feel like the difference between Tales from the Hood 1 and 2. It just felt like at this point, 10 years later, why? If you're just going to make another movie in the series and not really comment on anything, why do this? Competently enough done. I didn't really get the point to it existing because it didn't comment on the state of the franchise or how America's changed since then. And because those franchises came out in the wake of the Iraq War and, terrorism and, that was when we were doing waterboarding and all these things that American culture at the time, it felt like, I'm not sure exactly why it switched to torture porn or if, I know some people hate that term, but movies that involve bodily damage as part of some like game or, thing like that. It just feel like they should have commented on society more at this point than just making another movie that's like straight down the line that could have been released in 2006 and just fit in fine. And the fact that all the original characters from the prior movies, like Shawnee Smith and stuff, that all of them are gone. I don't remember what happened to any of those characters in those movies. But the fact that all of them are gone at this point is just like, well, there's really no reason to bring this back. Because if I remember correctly in those movies, that's where they blow Donnie Wahlberg's head up or something.
Yeah, I've only seen... I don't know. I feel like I did start watching some of the other ones, but I only remember part 1.
Well, because part 1 was the one where Cary Elwes, or how you pronounce his name, Cary Ells, gave like the worst performance of his career.
Yeah.
Danny Glover gave a pretty bad performance. And then the sequels, I thought part 2 was legitimately a really good kind of genre movie. And then from there, they just kind of went downhill to me in terms of quality. But Jigsaw's out there. So if you're a big fan of the series, you can watch it. Otherwise, if you just throw it on the background while you're doing work, you're not going to miss a ton. And then when the inevitable twist gets to you, be like, oh, okay. I don't really care about any of these characters, so that's fine. But I guess they're trying to set it up for some more movies, but I don't really get why.
Yeah. Well, money, I guess.
Yeah, or just trying to milk the IP they already own. I'm trying to think. So there's other stuff I watched.
Maniac, we both finished that season.
Yeah, Maniac. So it's on Netflix. It's not really horror. It's more just kind of out there genre that deals with some kind of out there concepts. But who is the director? I'm forgetting now. Cary Fukunaga.
Yeah.
So he was the director of True Detective Season 1. So the infamous like one-shot scene with McConaughey and all that stuff. So
Beast of No Nation.
Yeah. So, bringing his credentials here, making a show that I really like the fact that it was like, 8 episodes or 8 or 10, whatever it was, like, and they're not really supposed to be another season. It's supposed to be, done. So it's like, this one I want more just like one-shot series that don't have to leave things open just to create a sequel series.
Yeah, Emma Stone, Jonah Hill. I really, really enjoyed it. It definitely, this isn't a series that felt like it was made in the template of TV series. Like a lot of people know the TV formula. Let's write the TV formula. Let's have our cliffhangers here. Granted, there are cliffhangers at the end of some of these episodes or things that get teased, obviously, but it didn't feel like it was like, hey, we know how to build a story for TV.
Well, they weren't following the blueprint that all those sitcoms and series use, where by minute 3 this happens, by minute 10 this happens.
I mean, it really just felt like, hey, they want to tell this story. They're going to need 8 episodes to do it in, and they did it.
And all the episodes are under an hour, or at least they vary in length. But some are like 30 minutes.
Yeah, which I really liked because I don't,
keep it trim.
I love that about the show because it was a lot easier for me to get through this. So for me, the thing I loved about it was that, one, it was really light and funny. It's set in the future, but it's almost like this. I don't want to say cassette futurism, but all the computers look like Macs from
retro
the 80s.
futurism or something.
Yeah, it's a bit retro futuristic, but so it just feels it has its own personality.
Yeah.
Also Justin Theroux, he was phenomenal in it. Very, very funny. And was it Fujita or Fujito? There's a female doctor in it who was also in Ex Machina.
Okay.
and she is phenomenal and hilarious and great.
Yeah, Fujita.
But
Sally Field is in it.
yes, Sally Field is awesome in it. It also, the thing it reminded me of as well, I had to write it down because I always forget the name of the movie. Did you ever see Cloud Atlas? Wachowski
No, that
film?
was that the Tom Hanks one?
Yes, and Halle Berry. Somebody at my work was like, "Oh, this is an editor." When I worked at the TV station, he was like, "This is one of the best edited movies of all time." I don't agree with that in the slightest, but he let me borrow it because it's one of his favorite films. So I was like, "Okay, cool." I'm interested in their work. Obviously, that film has a great cast. But that film kind of jumps around in different times, and it uses, if I remember correctly, some of the same actors to tell different stories. Or I don't know if they're not supposed to be the same characters, but it jumps around in time, and setting, and so it's able to like have fun with that and kind of have like a big canvas and playground to tell this story that all links back together. This felt like the creators of the show, really having fun with the premise and being able to explore different almost genres and time periods and stuff. So basically it is a film about two characters who end up meeting. They both have their own baggage and stories going on, but essentially they go into this trials. I don't want to say medical trials. It's medical in some ways, but it's also heavily based on technology.
Yeah, it's a mixture of medication and technology to essentially like heal sadness.
Yes, it's supposed to basically just erase any trauma in your life, and so I think it just wraps up really nicely too, and it's not just, hey, they're going to erase the trauma, and it's about these two characters. It is about the people who created the device and why they want to do that. And it very much gets to the core of a lot of trauma that both these characters have experienced. And just kind of, I guess, the way events in people's lives affect them and how some people want to just forget them.
Yeah.
Some people, how to deal with those. But again, it's also a very fun and funny show at times, and very creative, and just, I don't know. It's not exciting in the way of like, say, a big action movie is necessarily, but it's just exciting in that you never know what the next episode's going to be. Past a certain point, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, if somebody was a fan of Legion, I think this would be right up your alley, because I think both shows at points do things that are weird for the sake of just being weird. And then if you're, I'm not really sure it falls in the same camp as like Twin Peaks: The Return, but like I said, Legion is a show that like has neon like colors on places and like brightly lit locations and kind of weird side stories and things like that. So if you like that show, or conversely, if you like Maniac, I think you might like Legion. So Maniac I really enjoyed, and I'm just kind of, I like these kind of one-shots where you get like talented people to come on board and do this, series that's easily digestible because it's not super long episodes, and it's not 13 episodes when it should only be 8, and then it's just done, and then it doesn't have to have lingering sequelitis and all that stuff. It's just, here's a story to completion. Mm-hmm. There could be more to tell in this world, like there is in any story, but it wasn't set up to be a cliffhanger sequel for another season. It was its own self-contained thing that you can watch and be done. And there's enough in there you can rewatch it and probably find a bunch of different little Easter eggs and hidden things that you didn't pick up on the first time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's definitely does not overstay its welcome. And again, it's so great that some episodes might be like 35 minutes and some might be an hour, but they always feel like they never feel bloated.
Yeah.
So that's like the best you could do for your audience is not overbloat your show. Especially when it is they are investing in a series and not just a film.
Didn't you watch some of Haunting on Hill House? I have not got a chance to watch that yet, but I'm hearing great things.
So that is from, help me, he directed.
Mike Flanagan.
Who did, what was the first film he did? Hush,
yeah. Well, it wasn't his first film. That was that Netflix movie he's done.
The first film
Hush,
that we were aware of.
Ouija, Origin of Evil, I think he did Absentia maybe, or... There was and then there was that one movie with Tom Jane that only got released like in the past year because of rights things on Netflix. Because I remember seeing trailers for that movie.
And then what's he doing next? He doing a Godzilla
Dr.
movie?
Sleep, I think.
Oh, Dr. Sleep, that's
which
right.
is the Shining sequel spinoff. He also directed Gerald's Game.
Yes.
Before Awake was the one that just got released on Netflix.
Carla.
Gugino. He did
from that
Oculus.
is in this show as well.
Yeah, so I've been excited to watch it, and I have been meaning to. I just didn't get around to it.
So this is one also too. I was way too tired. I've actually been watching it during the day. I had to split up 2 different days, but just working and daughter. Like every time I get a break, I'm like watching it and falling asleep immediately. Not because it's boring at all, but it is as you can tell by the name, a ghost story or
it's about a haunting.
Yeah, a haunted house. But I've only watched 1 episode, and I've seen people say, "Hey, it's a really good like family drama, horror film or horror series," and it really is so far. It's it kind of jumps around in time, and then you kind of start connecting the dots on what's going on as far as the stories. Unless I missed it, it was very clear at first. But I feel like it's just kind of telling some stories. Again, I was very tired and drifting in and out through some of this. And then things start getting pulled together and you see how, and it definitely, the first episode, definitely heavy on the family drama stuff. There's really only a couple, maybe attempts at a scare scene, but the opening of it, obviously probably, it starts with a bit of a scare and nothing too extreme. And nothing even too surprising, but I like the way it's handled. It's very measured, and
I think you gotta set up characters before you can kind of really go back into the scary part.
Yes, and it even seems like the end of this episode, it already seems like, hey, we're gonna jump back into it. And I like the way this episode ended. But you see so many ghost movies and ghost stories, and it's like sometimes a lot of the same stuff happens. As far as I'm not gonna spoil anything, but it's. This seems like they're dealing with some well-worn territory as far as some of the quote-unquote scary elements and creepy elements, but they are making the characters very rich and obviously want to actually tell a story about this family, which is, that's the reason, that it makes it a reason for watching the show. But also, too, what I've seen of the kind of scares, even though they are maybe, not like mind-blowingly original, they're what you expect out of ghost films.
Competently done.
I really like the way they're handled, though. As far as just, seeing a face come out of the shadows. That's what I mean. The typical stuff you always see done over and over again. But so far, it's been well done. But nothing like, nothing mind blowing. He hasn't like flipped a script on how to do a ghost story. But it is, and I think this was based on a book.
I think so.
I believe, and I think he wrote the adaptation of the screenplay for this, and directed it. I believe all the episodes, at least the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into the idea of giving kind of directors. Let's see, because the writer was Mike Flanagan, and then there's a few other credited writers. But I am totally in on the idea of giving a director or a creative like control of the series throughout an entire.
Way better, yeah.
Because you get a more coherent feel and. There's some series where they, like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, they swap directors in and out, and it feels pretty seamless because they have a really strong show running team. But some shows, you have different directors and you just kind of have no consistent tone and feeling, or it's just so routine, like those procedural shows on major networks.
Yeah, that you can't even tell who's behind the
As opposed on stuff, like giving like Mike Flanagan or Cary Fukunaga or whoever their own series is something I'm excited to see more of because it feels like series where people are going instead of independent film. Because there's more money for the producers to have a series with episodes than there is to make a single movie. And it seems like series get a lot of hype and a lot of articles on big, websites and social media presence versus a movie just kind of comes and goes. Mm-hmm. So it feels like we're probably getting more of those. So I definitely want to check this out. And like if you ask like, why'd you watch Jigsaw? I was looking for stuff that I could do while I was super busy with work, just have on the background that I didn't have to invest my entire thought process to. So I was holding the stuff I actually want to watch until I have more time.
So wish I just had all month to watch movies, but I'm like fighting to watch as much as I can because there's so much cool new stuff out. But again, like I watched Poltergeist 2 and part of 3 because, like watching my daughter or whatever, and I need to put something on that I've kind of seen before, like when I was younger. Yeah, it's not like
if I'm tired because was it Saturday we shot Chad's upcoming short film They Knock, and then Sunday I was just kind of tired all day because I had been tired from working and stuff, and I knew I was going to have to stay up late and get some stuff done. So I was like, oh, okay, that's why I watched Tales from the Hood too. I was like, something I don't mind if I fall asleep during, which I actually did. I went back and rewatched like the last 10 minutes. But there's a lot of times I'll just throw something on where it's like, okay, if there's something I really want to watch, I'm going to wait because I'm going to fall asleep. So I'll just throw this on because I don't care if I fall asleep.
Yeah. So the only other thing that I remember watching, I tried to watch a ton of stuff, but was as far as new was Terrified on Shudder. I only got a little bit into that film, but that was getting a lot of buzz. And sometimes plenty of horror films get a lot of buzz, and you watch it and you're like, okay, this is not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I see these other, certain groups of people may love it.
It depends on who the buzz is coming from. Sometimes.
So,
it's
you heard some
can
buzz from
expect.
this, but the buzz hasn't been as loud for this as The Haunting of Hill House or just plenty of other things out right now. But having said that, again, this is a movie, not a TV show.
Yeah.
But also, I'm a guy who prefers movies because I do just like the one-shot deal.
You spend an hour or two and you're done.
and no investment at all, and I can just jump from here to there. But this film, even the first 10 minutes, it opens very strong. It is, what is it? Where is it set? Buenos Aires, maybe?
Buenos Aires, I don't know.
I think so. I can't remember. Anyway, it is a foreign language film, but like within the first 10 minutes, some major things happen, and this film does not waste
it's,
any.
Buenos Aires.
Yes, does not waste any time, but it also doesn't feel like it's rushed or anything. Like it just starts out with a bang, and I'm already pulled in. I already feel like that the characters, from what I've seen, even in the first 10 minutes. They are strong characters as far as having some sort of personality, actually, and not just this, some horror films, they rely on the scares and everything else around them to kind of sell the experience. And sometimes the main characters are just feel like a blank slate. This character, one of the main characters is, I guess, a husband or boyfriend. And immediately I think he's interesting because he's kind of a bit of an asshole, not too bad, but he just seems like a regular person who maybe has, a short temper at times, but also like immediately he walks in, he's like, hey, that dog we hit the other day, turns out it didn't die. Like, you're like, oh, is this guy good? Like, did they just hit a dog and like not care about it, in their car? And then he hears the neighbors working on something like in the middle of the night, or that's what he thinks. And he's like banging out with a shoe, cussing out his neighbor. Then he runs over there and is like buzzing. Like, he has a personality. He may not be a likable guy, but also it throws you in that thing where if like something happens to him, just because he's not completely likable doesn't mean you don't have sympathy for him,
Yeah.
I think I was listening to, I don't know if it was a screenwriting podcast or what, but they were talking recently too about how if you have unlikable characters, then the stakes have to be such to where you are pulling for them and on their side. So the stakes have to be higher. It has to be, I don't want to say world ending, but death has to be involved or something like that. Whereas if you have just, a really shitty character, and let's just say like The Office, I don't know. But say if Jim was maybe the focal character and there was no other ensemble, but he was just a really shitty person and there was no real stakes, that would be the most boring thing in the world, and you just wouldn't enjoy that. So if you have a crappy protagonist, that the stakes need to be really high too. And this guy, I don't know if he's totally crappy. Like I said, I haven't figured out yet, but he's at least an interesting character that has a strong personality. And it's already very intriguing, like 10 or 15 minutes in. I watched a little bit more than that, but if you have Shudder, so far I recommend checking that out because it seems like that might hold up for me. If it keeps pace with what I've seen so far.
So now we'll move into our discussion of The Funhouse, the 1981 Tobe Hooper film. And this is a movie that was before Poltergeist and after Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And when you look at like Tobe Hooper, and we'll do full spoilers throughout because it's a movie, there's not a ton to spoil in it. I mean, it's essentially, teens or what passes as teens go to a carnival after night, late at night, and then end up staying overnight because reasons, and witness a person kill a prostitute, and things go from there. So, then after that, it's kind of, it's set in a fun house. So there's fun house elements to it, and there's a little bit of stalk and slash, and it definitely feels was like looking at the trivia. It was essentially kind of chasing the fame and popularity of Friday the 13th. And you can definitely see the influence of Halloween as well, especially in the opening. Because you have an opening that has first-person view, character puts on a mask.
So for me, I wrote down, because that drew attention to me. Yeah, you said Psycho too, the shower scene. But also, I feel like a little bit Black Christmas.
Yeah, Black Christmas, Halloween.
A little bit, the Black
Psycho.
Glove Killer, because there is like a Black Glove, which Giallo films too at the time. But I assume maybe Black Christmas more if it was something more easily seen at the time. But also... So I feel like, we talked about that. They show gratuitous nudity apparently in the beginning, and it sets up, it basically feels like it's the opening of Halloween. But then you figure out it's a kid just playing a prank on his sister. And for me, it feels like he was having fun with that trope already. Like it was already a really either well-worn trope or, again, just pulling right off of Halloween. It's Tobe Hooper's, I think, sense of humor coming through already in this film. As we know, Texas Chainsaw, he made that film, but then he didn't really, from what I remember, he didn't want to do a sequel, right?
Well, what was it? Because the Texas Chainsaw 2 is part of the deal with like Canon Films and stuff.
Yeah,
but
anyway, he didn't want to do a straight sequel and make it tonally the same. He wanted to make a comedy. So I feel like, again, this is his personality coming through. It's also something De Palma did in... Blowout. So the beginning of that film, minor spoilers, it's the opening of the film, is the same thing, first person perspective. This guy's stalking this woman. She's getting in the shower. She gets in the shower. He's going after her, same exact thing. But then I don't know if her scream is bad or what, and they cut and you realize they're shooting a film.
Yeah.
And people point out he's kind of making fun of himself too, because he did a lot of more slasher style films as well. So I think the opening is strong in that it is self-aware.
Well,
it's not just doing the same thing and then it just being a killer killing a woman in the shower.
Well, I think too, though, the beginning of the movie makes a lot more sense. So if you just showed this to somebody that had never seen any horror films and wasn't aware of Friday the 13th or Halloween or Black Christmas or Psycho.
They have to be aware of that trope, though, at this point.
I mean, like, if you were to find somebody that lived in a time capsule for 70 years, but... if you take all those, like with that context, it makes it seem like, oh, okay, they're kind of poking fun a little bit. And, I think Tobe Hooper and John Carpenter were friends. At least they worked on the movie Body Bags together and other stuff. So, if you're a lot of those guys at the time, interacted with each other and worked on different things and were probably in a lot of the same circles. That was really before the con culture took over. But at that point, though, if somebody had made Halloween level successful movies, I don't think they're going to those conventions at that point in their career. Like, I don't think today you would see... I mean, I guess, like, Jordan Peele's a little different, though, because he had success on their show before doing Get Out. But, the director of Paranormal Activity is probably not going to a bunch of conventions or something. But, like, but going back to, like... So it does feel like there's a little bit of kind of, friendly rivalry. They're kind of like what happened with like Sam Raimi and Wes Craven with Evil Dead and Hills Have Eyes and Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's kind of fun back and forth. And I think that opening kind of says, hey, this is going to be fun.
Yes, yeah.
It's not going to be, dour and so serious that you come out feeling gross like you might after Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And it is seems like it's directed at the audience for the people who go to see those films.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, everybody, we're all kind of in on this.
Yeah, it feels like, oh, this is going to be a fun night at the movies. And, so it's the idea that the dad doesn't like the fact that his daughter is going to go on a date with the guy that works at a gas station. So very classist there of him. Because what is it? The main character is Amy. So when she's going to go out with their boyfriend, Buzz... the dad's like, oh, he works
girlfriend. Woof.
Yeah, but then he's like, oh, he works at a filling station, and then the little brother, Joey, decides that he wants to go to the carnival too, or I guess it's just a carnival. But then they said, oh, well, isn't that carnival the one where somebody died in some other city at some point? So that they, go. So the girl, she lies and says they're gonna go to the movies, but instead they go to the carnival, and then she lies and says she's gonna stay the night at her friend's house. Which no parent would be dumb to think, oh, my daughter or son is going on a date with their significant other, and then they're going to stay the night at their friend's house afterwards. No one's going to believe that story. unless like you literally like see it happen. I guess it'd be a lot easier today though with cell phones and everything to make sure that's what was happening. But at the time, so basically what happens is that leaves the main character Amy and her friends with no alibi for where they're at for hours. Nobody's going to miss them for a while. So they decide when they go through the funhouse to stay.
But also too, that takes I feel like that doesn't happen until like an hour into the film almost. Like they're at this carnival for a while. Like there's a lot of scenes at the carnival because we have with a magician. They go to see a magician. Like there's a lot of carnival action going on when it's actually
they
operating.
See, like the two-headed cow.
Yeah,
and
they
then the little
have.
striptease dance.
It's just like you get to go to the carnival. The whole magician thing too. Like a little bit before that, it very much reminded me. Like I would love to have seen the Wet Hot Crew and David Wayne.
Yes.
Basically remake this film.
Yes.
Because how stereotypical like 80s like bro. And like sexist these guys are a little bit, and then they go in to see the magician, which is just like almost the scene from Wet Hot when Michael Showalter plays essentially a magician, and he's making terrible jokes and everybody's laughing at it. Like that was just like straight out of Wet Hot right there.
I would like.
I'm wondering if Wet Hot, played off that at all.
Because like, so now that you're saying this, I now want to make a movie in the vein of Funhouse, but as like a slapstick comedy.
Yes, yeah.
Because it lends itself so well just to take a few steps further out, and then you're full blown comedy.
Yeah.
Horror comedy though is a hard sell because it doesn't. I mean, like maybe for a streaming type deal would be okay for Netflix or something.
But I want to see the Wet Hot Crew make a horror film. This will be the perfect one because they jumped off of making so many the camp movies, Meatballs and stuff. From Meatballs to Wet Hot. Jump from the Funhouse to doing a carnival horror film.
I mean, I would love to see that. I mean, but like, so this movie, the main killer in the movie. Well, I don't know. There's kind of two. It's very much Texas Chainsaw. It's a kind of a family, the circus family, and you have the one, the kind of deformed. Well, you have the person wearing the Frankenstein mask and gloves, and you don't really know what's up with him. And he kind of walks like he's deformed or physically disabled in some way, and you don't know what's going on with that character. And he's wearing the Frankenstein mask and just kind of lumbering around. And then when our main characters have stayed the night at the fun house and decide they're just going to have sex in the middle of the fun house for some reason, they're able to see like him, like the carny wearing the Frankenstein getup, bring the fortune teller, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
Bring the fortune teller back and pay her $100 for sex. And then he prematurely goes on himself, and then she keeps the money, and he gets upset and kills her. And then, then after all that happens, he leaves, and then our main characters kind of go down, and then the one dude wearing glasses steals all the money. And then that's what kicks off all the events of the movie. And, there's a lot of that, the kind of Scooby Gang type aspect to it. It's only 4 people, so...
I like the beginning of this film, and I like the very end of it too, but because I think some of it lags a little bit, and when they're just kind of going through the carnival, it's just like, okay, this is very much...
you built a set, and you want to show it as much as you can.
Yeah, this feels very much like some horror films or films of that time where they just kind of meander because they're, I don't know if they're filling time or they think the humor in it is maybe more humorous than it actually is, and they think, hey, this is just entertainment.
Yeah.
That was what a lot of people did at the time. But having said that, I think the scene whenever they are watching them from the rafters and like drop the lighter and all that, I think that's I started really getting into it then because that does create tension. They're there watching it. Oh, and then he realizes that the guy with the glasses stole the money.
Yeah,
and
somebody stole it.
Yeah, he stole it, and so I think there it starts to build, and I like that scene a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the point in the movie where, like, if they just slipped the money through the crack, would all been forgiven, they probably would still try to kill him.
Yeah.
But I do like the element, too, of when the movie starts out, the dad is concerned about his daughter going to the carnival because that was the carnival that was in some other city where somebody died. And then the carnival workers, once all the stuff goes down, say, oh, we'll just, kill him. And, or no, was it... No, the fortune teller, after like the guy thinks through what's going to happen, he's like, oh, we'll dump her body and say the locals did it.
Yeah.
So there's the element of the locals being distrusting of the traveling carnival, and then the carnival workers thinking they can just blame everything on locals and just move on. So interesting kind of dichotomy there. But like I said, you said that's the point of the movie kicks into gear. And some of the stuff that I didn't really get though, because so the guy with glasses gets hung by a noose that just kind of comes out of nowhere, and there's nobody seemingly in the room with them when it happens. Because otherwise, if they have a gun and this creature that can kill people, why wouldn't they just kill them all right then and there?
Yeah.
But I guess it's like they have it booby trapped. They can just occasionally use, and I guess they're watching on closed
Circuit
camera or something, or just watching through peepholes or something, and like opening a trap door so the girl falls through and getting the guy on the noose. And so like those elements kind of felt like that was more for the element of, let's have an inventive kill or scare, more so than this makes logical sense. Because it seems like more so that like those elements seem like something that happened more like in Maniac we were talking about earlier. Kind of, the in a not real scenario, like an imagined or fake scenario that seems like what would happen versus
when you don't have to explain the logic because it's not completely real. But no, this is just set in reality and things just happen. It's again, there was definitely some enjoyable elements of this film. I know you've been wanting to do it for a while, and I do like the concept. But I'm also still surprised that. So what you read was that this has helped him get the job for Poltergeist, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised at that, just based on, I don't know, just the Spielberg tone of things, him being a producer on that. Like, this feels like a clash of Spielberg sensibilities.
Well, I think maybe too, part of it might have been, Tobe Hooper made this genre-defying movie that was ahead of its time in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because it came out in 74.
Yeah, I'm sure that definitely.
It was ahead of Halloween, all this stuff. So it was like one of these forefathers of horror. And, people now, I've heard people argue they like the remake from 2003 better. But regardless, like, the original was a watershed moment for horror. And then I think that after that, this movie, The Funhouse, was kind of a shift in gears and said this is more of a mass market movie, even though I think it ended up like in the video nasties in the UK, but it's, a movie that doesn't, it fit in with Friday the 13th and all those types of things. It did not feel as gritty and grimy and dirty. So maybe it's like, this guy that was an innovator in the genre can also shift gears and do something else.
Yes, okay. But also, too, I don't remember where this landed at, but all the things about how much did Spielberg direct of Poltergeist.
Yeah.
It could have been a thing, too, where, because I guess he legally couldn't direct anything.
Yeah.
Couldn't direct it at that time because I guess studio deals or different studio deals or something like that. So he could have said, hey, I like this dude. I like his movies, but let's slide him in here and let's work out a deal.
Let's slide into his DMs and get him up in here. But because there is the whole the
controversy with that.
Controversy with Spielberg and Hooper and all that stuff. But I think at the end of the day, you don't hire someone to direct a movie like that, Poltergeist, and then they
not have faith in them.
Not have faith in them or whatever. So, but like The Funhouse is just the movie where, and I've said before, this is a movie I don't understand. Out of all the things that have been remade, I don't understand how this one wasn't remade, because a lot of movies they're remade, like Prom Night, and others. It's like that
Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, so like Prom Night was one to me that was really sold on Jamie Lee Curtis more so than anything else.
Yeah, I was not a fan of that first one. The second one I thought was pretty good, but
yeah, and then the remakes were more in just like slasher zone. And then there's My Bloody Valentine in 3D is one where because like I'd watched that at some point when it was on Amazon Prime. And I think it made decent money, just I guess not enough to make another one. But there's some of these movies that you make sequels, or not sequels, or remakes, sequels, whatever, reboots. And you're like, why did you bring that back? But this is the one where the concept alone is just, so ripe for telling whatever
what just
you want
came
to.
out, the film the amusement park film with the killer in it.
Oh, Hellfest.
Yeah, Hellfest.
Yeah, it's kind of in the
maybe it's just like, hey, the name Funhouse doesn't really carry much financial weight, so if somebody wants to do this concept, and again, the film shot in Western Kentucky, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the name of it. I'll have to look that up. I don't know how to look it up because I can't remember any cast, but it's killing me. Anyway, so people have done that concept.
So there was Hellfest, and there's a movie called Bloodfest that's kind of similar too. And you have all those movies like that where I guess you like you have a festival going on, and while they're at the festival, someone's trying to kill them. So I mean, I guess you do have movies that have taken those elements and done something with it in recent times.
Haunted Ween.
Oh, Haunted Ween, yes.
Yes, Haunted Ween from 1991.
But I get why, like, my thing was, like, in the 2000s when everything was getting remade that had any type of name.
The Crazies. I went to see that remake when that came out.
Yeah, the Timothy Oliphant movie.
Yeah.
So these movies that didn't have a ton of name recognition to begin with got remakes. Because, you know, My Bloody Valentine was not the Friday the 13th level. It was kind of, you know, in terms of box office performance.
But that is tied to a holiday, and that's kind of,
yeah,
you know.
Like those Gary Marshall movies.
Yeah, yeah.
But the Funhouse, like I think in the mid 2000s, there was discussion about Eli Roth remaking it. And it's like, you've heard if you've listened to our past podcasts, you've heard my opinions on a lot of his films. That's one where I think that his sensibilities may have lined up with the project. But then there was that one Chainsaw short that he produced. He didn't direct it, but that had, I think Logan Paul was in that now that I heard.
Oh, wow.
Because
I watched that, but
because I'm
obviously
pretty
didn't know who he
sure,
was.
because I saw somebody reshare that recently. I was like, wait a minute, that's the dude that went to the suicide forest and caused all the controversy. But so you've had people approach the idea of you go to an event and something actually scary is there when it's not supposed to be. But I do think that embracing the tropes of a fun house is something that you would think would be easy to do. But at the same time, carnivals like this really don't, or like that don't really exist anymore. You have like little church picnics and festivals and state fairs. It feels like the traveling carnivals or circuses or things like that are kind of a thing of the past. It feels like now if you have anything, it's like Ringling Brothers and these bigger events. It doesn't seem like you have as many regional kind of
the
traveling.
carnivals now are less attractions and more just rides that they pop up places, you know?
Yeah.
Like a Kroger's parking lot.
Yeah,
You know,
and even
like-
those, I don't think they're really carnivals.
Yeah, but I mean, they're the closest
Yeah,
thing.
because you have like the little
Yeah.
kiddie roller coaster, the little thing that spins you around the air, and that you have some funnel cakes.
Why don't,
and,
you know, so many films, too, had the trope of the traveling carnival. You
Yeah.
know, like if Pee-wee's Big Adventure comes to mind. Just, there were so many that that basically played on that. Because it is, I think, kind of, you don't know these people. They're rolling into your town, you know, and also the stigma of, hey, they sell themselves on being freaks inside the carnival as they are billed.
Well, then like the movie Freaks.
Yes, for sure. But you know, now I think the more appropriate would be to make one about the rides not being secure and bolts coming out and the rides flying off, because that's what we
Some
hear
make
of
it Final
now.
Destination.
Is that you know, some of there's been accidents with those because they are put together and taken apart so often.
Well, and you have people that don't know what they're doing to operate the rides. So I mean, like,
Yeah, this film could be improved on for sure. This is not a classic that should not be touched. It is a good concept, and it is ripe for them. But again, we haven't seen Hellfest. I know some people seem to really enjoy it. But again, you know, like I said, people have remade this idea. But again, just
different names, different ultimate concept. You know, same idea. If you go to some,
how much can Toby Hooper's Funhouse? You know, how much are they charging for that? The license to remake that film, though, it can't be that much.
Yeah, I mean, like, but
Let's remake it.
Yeah, let's look into it. I mean, like let's do a short film. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, or you have to get lucky and find somebody that has a fun house or carnival set or something, and then just shoot a short.
Shoot one of the
and
local
then
haunts and just make that
shoot
a
a
proof of
short,
concept.
and as a proof of concept, try to get the money. But like the main thing about Funhouse that made me want to do it on the podcast at some point is whenever I'd seen this, I think on AMC in the 90s, early 2000s. I was in high school or middle school. And I watched it like midnight during a week when I was supposed to be asleep in bed. And I used to just stay up and watch whatever was on AMC. And this is one of those movies that I stayed up and watched the first time. And it just like really gave me a feeling of Halloween. And I was just like, oh, okay. This is something that just I like seeing around that holiday every now and then, because it just evokes a feeling to me. Even though it's not set during October, really, it just kind of evokes the feeling of Halloween type stuff.
It does feel like a film of that ilk of Friday the 13th that was made for that season. You know, even though it isn't set in that season or anything, it feels like, hey, this is just a slasher film basically with a twist, and have fun with it.
And I like that too, the younger killer. So not the dad that runs the whole carnival thing, but like the killer guy is kind of like a werewolf creature. You know,
very
and
striking design that almost
hasn't been
bold.
replicated.
Yeah, almost bold, like because it almost seems really fake on some level, but also it's way more interesting than just having some guy that was a little deformed that you would, how you would expect.
Something like
him
a
to-
burned face
Yes,
or something.
yeah, it's a very interesting design that I think is way more exciting than some of those creature designs.
Because there is the element of, in real life, if you were, for whatever reason, decide to stay the night at a carnival and you're watching stuff go down and then you see the guy take the mask off and it looks like that, you're probably going to need another pair of pants because you're just like, what is that?
Yeah, where was this person found?
And then too, it's also kind of funny to me that the guy Buzz, when he gets in physical altercations, doesn't immediately win very easily.
Yeah.
Like his arms, he should have knocked the other dude out pretty quick. I mean, but part of it's just if you have your protagonist come out on top easily, the movie ends.
Was that Amy? Was that the main character that was standing there just screaming, or was that the
Yeah.
other? Yeah, and that's another thing too that now is less progressive. That she literally does not help at all, and she is just sitting there screaming when he's getting in a struggle with was it the older man, or was it?
Yeah, well, they get into the shoving match that then he prevails, but then the creature comes through.
Yeah, she just literally sits there and screams when she could have helped out, and they could have easily taken him down.
Yeah, if she just grabs whatever's in the background,
Yeah,
hits the guy
but
in the
this
head.
is the traditional like helpless female. Which people did not seem to take any offense to in that era, and not that I'm like so offended by it. It's just like, man, come on, you're gonna just sit there and scream, I'm not saying the person would, not necessarily jump on them, but either fight or flight. There's gonna be two things. That was like the most inactive person at all.
I
ever
think you
just standing there.
follow what a lot of those movies had in their female leads, or the final girl, or whatever you want to call them, is that there was characters that were very passive in the narrative. They didn't do a lot. I mean, at least like in Halloween, Laurie Strode had stabbed Michael Myers in the neck, stabbed him in the eye with
protecting the kids,
and then stabbed him with the knife. May have just sat in front of doorways for no reason, but at least was more active in the narrative. And at the end, Loomis comes in at the gun.
Spoilers. By the way, what, like 3 days, 2 days?
Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the new Halloween on this Thursday, just because I might be busy this weekend, so I went ahead and got a ticket. But yeah, so then you have these like the Friday the 13th. Alice had a little bit more to do in her narrative, and then Friday the 13th Part 2. I'm forgetting character names. In my stupid phone, because that was the most, at least from what I remember, one of the most active like female protagonists in those horror.
Was her name
films.
Amy?
No, I keep spelling everything wrong. But that Jenny. The actress's name was Amy.
Okay, that's
But Jenny was one of the most like active protagonists in that, she figured out the Voorhees story, used the sweater of his mother, convinced him to calm down. So like very active protagonist, actually lived through the movie and never got revisited for some reason. But
she doesn't die in the beginning of the third one?
No, because I think the beginning of the third one just shows like the police there and stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't really show what happens to her after that. But because that's the end of the second one is where they're in front of the window and he comes through and she's like, "Where's Paul?" or whatever. But she's alive the next day. But a lot of these movies around the era had female protagonists or female leads or whatever, the main girl that wasn't very assertive in the narrative. It was just kind of a passive character. This is another character in this movie in the Funhouse. Amy was pretty passive and just kind of survived simply by not being the target in most cases. Because when there's also just that she was the, taking an odd approach because, a lot of times the virginal character is the one that's covered up. And regardless of what they look like, they're the one that's covered up and they're not exposed and engaging in sex, which is why they survive, as opposed to this movie starts off with the main character
Toby
naked.
Hooper likes to subvert expectations, or he was not aware of them.
Yeah, or just, was writing a character. It's like, well, she didn't do anything yet. She was just naked in the shower. But it's just one of those things where her character didn't do a lot. And like you said, only survived the end because everyone else died before they could get to her. And then you have, the element too of, well, she just got out and it wasn't locked, but I guess She was just they were just trying to get to that exit anyway. And then by the time she got to the exit, everyone was dead. So she was just able to leave. And like, there's the entire subplot of her brothers there. And then the carnival workers
really say much.
find him. And then he thinks that she's tricking him and getting back at him for what he did, which is why he doesn't tell anyone that he knows that they're there, but they haven't left yet. And there's all of that element. And that subplot kind of reminded me of Spookies, because there's the kid in Spookies who's kind of just creeping around and stuff.
Doesn't really,
Even though that's two movies kind of smushed together, at least in this one, it's part of, he's the brother. But a lot of these movies, like if it was Friday the 13th Part 4 or whatever, like where Corey Feldman's character's into horror stuff, like actually being an active participant, the little kid in this one's mostly just like, I'm running around. Oh, the carny called my parents. So you have like the element, like these kind of dangling threads they could have done more with, or could have had a more active female lead, which I think if you were to make it again today, that's what you would do. Or just completely subvert all of that.
She didn't have to be like,
Xena warrior princess.
Yeah, she can just run away and leave her boyfriend. Like do something interesting. Be a coward or do something.
Or just be like, hell no, I'm not staying at a carnival. If you want to fool around, we'll fool around your car.
Another thing too is whenever the monster dies, I'm already drawing a blank on how exactly he dies.
Electrocuted.
He gets pushed up against the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like her reaction to that too is just like this ugly cry. Like she doesn't have any tears, but like she's horrified, but also crying, I guess, that everything has happened. And that is, it's not like attractive at all. And I'm saying this as a positive on the film, because usually like when the survivor of the film is crying and it's, they may look worn or whatever, but like this was like an ugly, ugly cry, and it felt more authentic. Like I feel like Tobe Hooper was like, no.
Maybe it's a long day of shooting.
Yes,
she was
like,
tired.
Like this is how somebody would actually cry. Like this is a lot of times you may shoot something or direct actors in a certain way to where it is maybe not, is maybe looks better than the reality of it. Even though people may cry in films or whatever, they may say, hey, don't cry like that. That's a little whatever. Like she had an ugly, ugly cry, but I like that because it added to it made it feel like it had a little bit more weight to it.
It's like all these different movies and shows and everything have women sleeping in makeup and bras.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't know any woman who sleeps in their bra, aside from like accidentally falling asleep. And
my wife does occasionally.
Well, I mean,
she
like
does a lot.
But usually, Usually in movies,
it's always covered up.
In movies, it's just so they can have someone wearing bra and panties, but not fully nude, probably because they don't want to do nudity. So you just get around it by doing something that's not as realistic, that somebody would just sleep in just bra and panties or something. But like in movies, like you said, a lot of times the characters, I'm trying to think of an example, like a lot of those 90s, early 2000s post-Scream slashers, everybody looked like $1 million the entire time throughout the entire thing. And if anything, their shirt just got a little bit more cut open or something. Yeah. As opposed to a movie like this has.
But even if they're crying, like I don't know, does Jessica Biel cry at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre or through elements of that? I don't know. I just feel like she would still always look pretty. She wasn't doing some sort of ugly cry. In the film, but yeah, I don't know if that was intentional or not, or Tobe Hooper was trying to like, hey, or maybe go for it.
Maybe it was just coincidental. That's the take that worked.
Yeah, and that's the way maybe she acted, and they thought, well, that's the way she cries. But either way, that kind of drew my attention for some reason.
Yeah, so to me, the movie is like the sum of its parts is more than any individual piece of it, because at a basic level, there's really nothing to separate it in terms of what happens in the movie from the other slashers of the era. I think it's better executed, and it definitely looks way better than some of the stuff like Prom Night or
Prom Night. That transfer we watched is rough.
I mean, but too, just like the film stock and stuff, it had a little bit more money behind it, and it just feels like a movie that's very much of a time and era. And like I said, if you were to remake it, it's kind of interesting to decide, like, would you make it a period piece or would you make it set in current day? Because in current day, you'd have cell phones and all these things. But then if you have cell phones, they just, wave it away with, oh, there's no service in here or something like that. But it just feels like it's a concept that, like I said, of all the franchises that got reboots, the fact that this one didn't get that far along was surprising to me. And this is a movie too, like, as much as I don't like some of Rob Zombie's style, I think he'd be like a fit for this type of thing.
Yeah, I think he would. I think he could do a good job with this.
Well, like, I don't know, with the caveat of a script written by someone else, because House of 1,000 Corpses had some of these elements of kind of like, you know, the goofy Funhouse type stuff. Because there's a number of movies that have had elements of that, but just a lot of them haven't gone far enough.
I was just looking up the Blu-ray of this because I would very much like to hear more about the production of it. Yeah, the commentary. I'm just seeing if it has, what does it have? I don't think they go into details on the special features, it looks like. But it appears to have some because they gave the extras a 3.8 out of 5, unless there's another page to it. But yeah, I would be interested in checking out this disc for sure. I just rented it on streaming. Because it was nowhere to be found.
Yeah, because I just rented it as well. Just because I may have a copy, but I couldn't find it, so I just rented it. I think it was on streaming services at some point. But, you know, it's one of those movies, because like Tobe Hooper, when you look at his career, you know, had Texas Chainsaw, this, and then Life Force was one that seemed to kind of hurt his career a little bit. Because that was one that had a little bit of money put into it. Because that was, you know, going for a bigger scope than his other work. Because let's see, what all did Tobe Hooper do? So,
by the way, it does have an audio commentary by Tobe Hooper. It says all new for Blu-ray commentary, and then a couple other featurettes from executive producer, composer, actor.
So Tobe Hooper, of course, directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He did the Salem's Lot. Then he did the Funhouse, Poltergeist, Life Force, Invaders from Mars, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Did some stuff on Amazing Stories, some other TV stuff. He directed that. I think it was the pilot of Freddy's Nightmares, where they kind of recap the backstory to Freddy Krueger on that. Spontaneous Combustion.
Did I watch that?
Yeah, you talked about it.
Yeah.
Some Tales from the Crypt. Body Bags, Dark Skies, some other TV work, Crocodile, trying to think, Toolbox Murders, Mortuary Masters of Horror, which I think I remember which episode was his, but and then after Masters of Horror, he did Destiny Express and a movie in 2013 called Jinn. So
still working.
You know, he was working, you know, pretty consistently, and he passed away in 2017. So it just seems like a lot of the directors from that era, you know, like John Carpenter, kind of tapered off after a certain point. And, you know, but then there's people like Steven Spielberg that got, I mean, I don't know if they're comparable. They worked together, but Steven Spielberg was making big blockbusters throughout. And it feels like a lot of those horror directors from that era, you know, kind of tapered out over the years. Like Wes Craven's, you know, somebody that stands out because he continued making movies up until the very end, or, you know, till close to the end, and made movies that had, you know, decent critical success. But it just feels like Tobe Hooper was somebody that's kind of one of the forefathers of a lot of the horror stuff that we're, you know, aware of now, but was kind of not as talked about because a lot of people talk about Wes Craven, John Carpenter.
Yeah, he didn't have a strong like second or third wave hit or franchise. You know, like Wes Craven. Yeah. He did a few things and then even had Scream, which was like a big new franchise that relaunched a lot of things. Carpenter had multiple hits as far as cult favorites.
Yeah, I mean, like The Thing, a lot of those movies are kind of bombs when they came out.
Yes, but I'm talking about as far as fan, you know, and Tobe Hooper, obviously he has his fans, but really ones that people really latch on to. Yeah, they like Poltergeist, they like Texas Chainsaw 2. Yeah, you know, Funhouse gets talked about a little bit, but it's just, he's not on that level as far as repeat success, I don't think.
Yeah, because I think that, you know, somebody like Wes Craven, they had Nightmare on Elm Street, and then they had Scream, and then he did other stuff like Red Eye, was just a thriller, and even
New Nightmare was almost like a relaunch as far as like a reconfiguration, and yeah, it was another exciting
movie that was more appreciated over the years than it was at its time of release. But then, you know, you have some of the directors that have like their third, second, fourth wave and keep making stuff, and you have people like John Landau who made mainstream comedies in addition to like American Werewolf in London. So you have people that kind of jumped around and did what they did. You know, it's kind of hard. You can't forget what Tobe Hooper's place in horror is, But a lot of people today, like in different indie films, you see in the credits, like, oh, this is dedicated to Wes and John. And so people, or Sam Raimi, people like Sam Raimi made Evil Dead and then he was in Body Bags. It was in it as like an actor, and then made, Darkman, but then made Spider-Man and all these different like multi-billion-dollar franchise movies. So, directors from those eras either kind of went big or kind of stayed what they were doing and then kind of leveled out over time.
Yeah. Fortunately, Tobe Hooper didn't find as much success, I think, is the other ones, but again, it doesn't make his contribution any less significant.
Well, then something like
a huge contribution.
Life Force is kind of a baffling movie because,
and two, even though they're maybe not as popular, I still I enjoy that movie. And again, I think Texas Chainsaw 2 is my favorite Tobe Hooper film. I love that movie.
Well, in that movie, a lot of current day people and directors owe their aesthetic to that movie because if you go and pull Rob Zombie, like he pretty much like got his aesthetic from that. But like Life Force, because Dan O'Bannon was one of the writers on that who also wrote Alien. So and Return of the Living Dead. So you have somebody that he was, could have had an Alien type hit, but it just didn't.
Yeah.
But like back to the Funhouse. It's a movie that I think for an October viewing is a great time. And it's not a super long movie. Because let's see, how long is Funhouse? It is
96, maybe
1 hour and 36 minutes. That a little bit. When we take off the credits and all that stuff, not a super long watch. And it feels like there's enough cool visuals and things going on that it's an entertaining watch. And I would put it above, like the slasher heap. I would say it's, towards the top of that. It's not at the same level as Halloween and the Friday the 13th in terms of popularity or, success.
But the ones that were chasing the tails of those big ones, it is a better one. Yeah,
I think it's a lot better than a lot of the Me Too's and wannabes. There's other stuff like The Burning or My Bloody Valentine or some of those other movies we talked about. But, this one has a different feel and it feels more substantial than some of those other ones. I guess we can kind of wrap that up and give what our scores are. So what would you give this out of 10?
I don't know. I mean, I liked it. Also, I was very tired watching this. I would not go any higher than a 7. I'll say that. I don't know if I want to go to 6, but I'll say a 7.
Because it's got a 5.9 out of 10 on IMDb. I don't think that's a super unfair rating.
Yeah.
I think in terms of just like all movies, when you're talking about any movie that exists, it's not top tier. But like when you're talking about just like, fun horror films, to me, like the nostalgic value, like when I first saw this for the first time from beginning to end, it was a TV edit. So ultimately, the only thing it really cut out was the nudity and just it cut out the parts that showed the full nudity. So it didn't cut out that much, really. Most of the violence was left in, and because there's not a ton. So it really only took out a little bit of the beginning nudity or just cut around it for the TV edit and then cut around some of the stuff like at the striptease part. Beyond that, the movie was pretty similar. But like when I first saw that for the first time when I was like 13 or whatever, then it was like a 9 out of 10 because like, this is really cool. Mm-hmm. Going back to it now, and it's like 6.5, 7. Like, out of that era, it's a fun movie, but it's definitely not a substantial landmark film. It's just one that I like to watch every now and then just because nostalgic value and just the fact that it has a creature as the killer that's not just a tragic backstory person that went away to a mental institution or something. It's just a dude that's
Michael.
It's just a guy that doesn't, he to steal a line from Arrested Development, prematurely blew himself and then got really, it's actually about male impotence and toxic masculinity. But yeah, it's one of those movies where just the idea that it was like such a different design for the killer stuck out to me. And
I think that really sets it over the edge. And it's like, go big or go home. I like that it was a drastically maybe unrealistic design, but it made that memorable. Film have a different feel and it was way more memorable. Yeah.
Yep. So then I'll wrap up our discussion of the Funhouse. On the next episode, we'll be discussing Halloween 2018, the new movie from director David Gordon Green that brings Michael Myers back. And I've been trying my damnedest to avoid trailers for it because you scroll through social media and they've got a spoiler in the 4-second preview that as you're trying to scroll through, it's, Jimmy Lee Curtis doing so. It's like, no, don't just show Michael Myers just standing there. But so I've tried my best to avoid any trailers. I'm going to go in hopefully knowing as little as I can about the series. But that'll be the next episode. If you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor and leave a review. That helps other people find the podcast. You can also help us out by going to YouTube or Amazon Prime and leaving, if you're a fan of our short films or stuff, leaving some thumbs up or comments there, because that helps other people find those products. And we try not to astroturf or ask people, oh, give us reviews so they're good. But if people do enjoy our work, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to go out and leave a review. And then the short film They Knock that we shot, the goal was to have it out before Halloween. We'll see what the timeline is.
Yeah, I'm looking at the date and I'm like, I don't know. I need to talk to Chad about that because that's 15 days away, and I don't know about if it was just editing, yeah, but like the sound design, music, and all that, I think that's gonna hang us up.
There's a little bit because the short film I did shared was 2 minutes.
Yeah,
and I had shot a bit of that ahead of time and built the sound design out for the most part. So I just had to drop in and I had shot test footage I put in the place of what the final footage was. Yeah. So I had kind of done all that ahead of time. This was shooting the entire thing and shooting on your C200, so it's in all like the raw light format, so bigger files, more color grading needed. Huge project file.
And also too, I just got other projects.
And then you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I've got client work.
And then I've got a lot of work this month because I've been busy constantly. So hopefully we'll have it out as soon as possible, but we'll have more details on when to expect it soon. But yeah, then you can find everything we're doing at housebyvideostore.com. You find links here to all of our social media accounts, to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of that. And then if you want to find us specifically on the internet, the best place to find me is on Instagram at @TheWilliamCaps.
And I'm at BlevinSean on Twitter.
And that'll wrap up this episode of the House by Video Store podcast. Thanks for listening.